As Laura said, I work for a philanthropic foundation in San Francisco that funds technologists and civil society organizations that develop platforms and applications that increase civic participation. So for me to use my 4 minutes and 50 seconds to make a critique of civic participation is a strange thing to do, but I'm a strange person, so I'm going to try it. I'm going to go for it. 2 years ago, I moved from Los Angeles to Mexico City, from one megacity of traffic to another megacity of traffic and chaos and congestion. I arrived to my neighborhood, and I wanted to become involved in my neighborhood. I wanted to become involved in some sort of neighborhood association to participate civically, as I'm prone to do. So I found a comité vecinal of neighbors who have some campaigns, some advocacy campaigns that they do. It was at a local coffee shop, so I sat down with my neighbors at the local coffee shop, and I said, okay, what are the campaigns? What are we here trying to accomplish together? If I can help out, I'm a technologist. I could help develop some of the applications maybe, or I could make introductions. And they had three main campaigns that they were doing at that time. One was they didn't want anyone to develop any buildings, to construct any buildings over 3 stories. And there were 3 main reasons for this. One is because the neighborhood is running out of water, and they said if we have even more people who live here, then we're going to have less water in our neighborhood, in our buildings. 2, they said, I'm sure that the politicians are receiving bribes to give out the permits to construct these big buildings, and I don't want the politicians to have bribes, so I don't want big buildings in my neighborhood. And 3, I don't want lots of more people coming into my neighborhood because if there's more apartments that are being sold, then the value of my house goes down rather than up. All 3 of which make sense, but the problem with Mexico City, and I think this is probably happening in most cities, including Buenos Aires, is that if you don't have tall buildings in the central neighborhoods, where I live, I'm close to the center of Mexico City, then the cities expand further and further and further out. And so maybe it's true that we don't have much water, and sometimes we don't have water in our neighborhood for 2 or 3 days, but it's also true that if they build many more suburbs on the outskirts of Mexico City, that we also won't have water. It's not like all of the water in Mexico City is just for one single neighborhood. So that was the first campaign, and I said, well, I want to be involved, but I don't agree with it. I think that we actually do need tall buildings, and we need tall buildings next to metro stations. So I was a little conflicted. Then the second campaign was that the city of Mexico City said, we want to cut down all of the trees that are non-native species in the park in your neighborhood. And the neighbors didn't like this at all. They said, no, we've had these trees for a long time. We love the fact that there's so much greenery in our neighborhood, that there's so much shade, that we can go to the park and we could read under a tree. But the problem is that these trees that are non-native species in Mexico use up a lot of water, the same water that we don't have, that we're not able to take showers with and drink and whatnot. So it's a good idea to get rid of the non-native species and have just the native species that use less water, and have more native species so there's just as much shade, the parks is just as nice. But again, the neighbors didn't want this. The third campaign that they had is that in Mexico City, it took me a long time to understand this, or to understand the logic of it. It costs money, you have to pay money to drink water, which is something I wasn't used to. I'm used to opening the tap and drinking a glass of water. It also costs money to use the bathroom. To enter any public restroom, I have to pay 50 cents, sometimes $1. But it doesn't cost any money to park my car. In my neighborhood, I can park my car anywhere and it's free, but to go to the bathroom, I have to pay money. And for me, this was very strange. So the third campaign that neighbors were involved in was saying, we don't want parking meters. We don't want to have to pay anything for parking. We're used to having our cars. We're used to not paying anything for it. So there's no way that we're going to pay money. Another explanation that they had is, why would we give even more money to the government when we're sure that they're going to use that money and they're just going to take it for themselves and they're corrupt? So if I were a politician, and today I've been hearing a lot of representatives from government saying, we love civic participation, we want more civic participation. Personally, if I were a representative for government, I think civic participation would be the biggest pain in my ass. Because I have all of these great ideas that I want to do, and there are all these pesky residents who are not letting me implement my grand projects that are actually going to help the city. I think that there's a problem here. Part of the problem is that the dynamic of citizenship, including the new citizenship that Juan talked to us about, is that the government proposes something for the citizens, saying, you know what, now it's time that we need parking meters, here's why we need them, this is the idea. And then the citizens react to the proposal, saying, no, I don't like the change, I'm not convinced, I think that you're just going to use our money, you're going to charge me for what I shouldn't be paying for, and you're going to steal it. And then there's this big debate, and there's a lot of articles, a lot of op-eds are written, but it's never resolved. Nobody's happy. The government's not happy. The citizens aren't happy. But what if it were reversed, and instead of the government saying, here's what we propose, how are you going to react to it, citizens? Or here's our data, how are you going to monitor it? What are you going to say about what we do? What if instead the government said, what is it that you care the most about? For example, they're building a new library in my neighborhood, but I have no idea if they've done any kind of market study about what the neighborhood needs for a library. What do the residents think of what is a library for the 21st century? Do they need books? Are they checking out the books? What's the data that's being used? And then ask them, have surveys. What do you propose for this space? Maybe it would be better to have a neighborhood cultural center or a coffee shop. There are a couple platforms that I've seen in Brazil. Ciudades is working with governments to take in proposals from citizens. In Mexico, there's Acciones DF in Mexico City. Yo Propongo is another one. But I think that we have to think a little bit about the model of saying it's not just about citizens making complaints, which is very easy to do, or doing monitoring, but also be involved in the process to say, here's what I would like to see happen, not here's how I'm going to react to what you have to say. I think that this is the two ways of open government to construct a new type of citizenship. And I'm going to leave it there because I think that it would be good to have a discussion and a little bit of debate about citizenship as well. Thank you.